My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton Tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome to We Need to Talk About with me, Bev Turner, on GB News. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining me. I'm standing in for Alex today. We're going to get stuck into the issues that we should be looking at in depth. So keeping me company is going to be political commentator Benedict Spence. And here's what else is coming up on the show. The government plan to fast-track the return of Albanian migrants. It comes after new figures show that around 60% of those crossing the channel on small boats to enter the UK are from Albania. Plus, why police investigating the murder of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt Corbell in Liverpool, so they say that they have a number of very positive lines of inquiry. And GCSE results are out today, but hundreds of students who sat an alternative to A-levels are still waiting for their grades a week on from when they should have received them. That's what we're going to be talking about for the next hour. But what do you need to talk about? Email me, gbviews@gbnews.uk, or tweet me at gbnews. But first, it's time for the GB News headlines with Rhiannon.
Bev, thank you. Good afternoon. It's coming up to 2 minutes past 2. Your top stories from the GB Newsroom. Police have said they will not rest until they find the gunman that killed 9-year-old Olivia Pratt Corbell in Liverpool on Monday. In a press conference, Merseyside detectives also confirmed they've identified a second man involved in the fatal shooting. They say he was with the 35-year-old who was shot. The gunman remains at large despite pleas from officers for his surrender. Detective Chief Superintendent Mark Carmine says the force is working around the clock to find Olivia's killer.
I asked for the man responsible for this brutal, callous, thoughtless attack to surrender himself to the police. Unfortunately, that individual has failed to do that. But my message to him remains the same. We will not rest until we find you, and we will find you.
Well, in that press conference, Merseyside Police also confirmed the arrest of a man and a woman following another fatal shooting in Liverpool. Council worker Ashley Dale was found with gunshot wounds in her back garden in the Old Swan neighbourhood in Liverpool on Sunday. The GCSE pass rate this year has fallen since 2021, but does remain above pre-pandemic levels. The number of top grades is also down from last year, but higher than in 2019. Students across England, Wales and Northern Ireland are receiving their GCSE results today after sitting exams in person for the first time in 3 years. British Gas has announced it'll donate 10% of its energy supply profits to help customers cope with soaring bills. Its parent company Centrica says some customers could expect grants of up to £750. It comes ahead of the next energy price cap set to be announced tomorrow. Some are forecasting a typical annual energy bill of up to £3,500. Well, Will Hodson, consumer champion at How to Save It, told GB News he expects the price cap to go up even more.
What we're expecting to happen is there's going to be an announcement that the price cap is going to rise from where we are now, just under £2,000, up to about £3,600. Where we are is in a state of complete reliance on very, very expensive gas, and that applies at a national level, where we've got it in our fuel mix, and it also applies, in our homes, in our businesses, where we're using so much of it.
The UK's last fertiliser plant is to stop production, leading to concerns around the availability of carbon dioxide for the food and drink industry. CO2 is a byproduct of fertiliser production and is used for slaughtering animals and in the production of beer. One of UK's biggest producers of CO2 has decided to temporarily freeze its production of ammonia due to soaring energy costs. Brewers and meat producers have warned it'll have a knock-on effect with their operations. Elsewhere, the Texas police chief tasked with protecting schools at Uvalde has been fired more than 3 months after the mass shooting that killed 19 children and 2 teachers. Pete Arredondo's termination was voted on unanimously by the Texas School Board last night. He was criticised for his lack of leadership after reports that it took officers more than 77 minutes to storm the school and stop the gunman. GB News understands that 60% of people arriving in the UK on small boats that have crossed the Channel come from Albania. It comes as the British and Albanian governments reach a new agreement which will allow for the faster removal of those attempting to enter the UK. The deal will see senior Albanian law enforcement officials based in the UK to help identify those with no legitimate claim for asylum. GB News has been told that around 6,000 Albanians have crossed the Channel so far this year. And Britain will offer technical expertise to Ukraine as part of a new support package to help the country rebuild its infrastructure. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps says British experts will share technical knowledge in building airports, runways and the reconstruction of ports. Engineers from a number of UK companies such as Rolls-Royce and Heathrow Airport will also help. This is GB News. We'll bring you more as it happens now, though. It's back to Bev with We Need to Talk About.
Very good afternoon. Thank you for joining me. You are with Bev Turner on We Need to Talk About on GB News. I'm standing in for Alex Phillips this afternoon. Now, we're starting with Priti Patel's plan to fast-track the removal of Albanian migrants who come to the UK by crossing the Channel on small boats. It comes as GB News has learnt that a massive 60% of those currently arriving across the Channel are from the tiny nation of less than 3 million on the Balkan Peninsula. So let's speak now to GB News Home and Security Editor Mark White. Now, Mark, we spoke, I think it was only last week, and the number we had then was 40%. Where is this new figure of 60% come from?
Well, it's just latest figures I'm being told. And the real concern here is that, of course, the small boats issue in itself is a crisis. But what we've got effectively with the growing number of Albanians who are coming across is a crisis within a crisis. It has effectively now resulted in what is an emergency agreement between the UK and Albania to try to expedite the return of those who are coming across that have no right to be here. And actually, officials, the government believes that those the majority of those coming across from Albania, a safe country on the Balkan Peninsula there on the fringes of the European Union, have no legitimate right to claim asylum here. They are not fleeing any war zone, that's for sure. We can look at some of the figures that puts this into perspective, Bev. 23,000 22,500 have arrived in small boats so far this year. It's actually now more than that since we prepared this graphic, because another 500 have come today now. Off the 23,500 now up to probably about 23,800, some 60% of those who are arriving are from Albania. So this week alone, we're looking at about 2,500 so far who have arrived. So you can extrapolate from that more than, well, close to 1,500 may well be from Albania by the time the week is out. And so far, for the year so far, we're told that more than 6,000 Albanians have arrived here in the UK. But again, that number is rapidly out of date. That is figures probably from about a week ago. We're actually even over that figure now. And just to give you some perspective on just how significant that increase is, if we just think back 2 years to 2020, then just 50 Albanians arrived by small boat. And this is down in no small part to the fact that Albanian crime gangs are taking over some of the people smuggling operations in northwestern France. They are advertising to their own communities back home in Albania, telling them that this is a place to come, that they can give them deals to come on these small boats. And it seems that the young people of Albania are responding in very significant numbers.
So the government says it hopes to rapidly remove these people, and most of them are young men who arrive here. How quickly will that happen, Mark, and how easy is that to do?
It's not easy at all. In a best-case scenario, I think they're hoping that they could have a fast-track process of assessing an asylum claim and then deciding whether it has merit or it's not, and that person has no right to be here, and maybe within 2 to 3 weeks that person could be removed. And as part of that process, trying to help in that will be Albanian law enforcement officials who come over here to Dover Harbour, where the Border Force vessel Typhoon, you can see there, is coming into Dover Harbour. They will help in that initial assessment, trying to determine those that might have legitimate claims or the many that the government here believes won't have legitimate claims to asylum, and get them removed. But in all of this, nothing is ever straightforward in this small boat crisis, and we know that human rights lawyers will have no doubt challenge a lot of the initial refusals for application here for asylum. So although the government hopes 2 to 3 weeks and they could be back on a plane back to the Albanian capital, Tirana, in reality, it might be much longer than that.
And that would be at our expense, Mark, at the taxpayers' expense to fly people back, or will the Albanian government foot some of that bill?
I'm sure that actually the British government will probably just charter and pay for the flight. They'll be more than happy to pay what is, relatively speaking, a small cost in comparison to putting these people up in hotels or elsewhere for long periods of time. If I give you an indication, actually, in terms of the asylum process as it goes through, this fast-track process, they hope they can get done a lot quicker. But since 2018, since this small boats crisis really manifested itself, less or more than 85% of those who have come across by small boat and claimed asylum are still awaiting decisions on their asylum claims. So 85% of those who've arrived in small boats, worth repeating, who've arrived in small boats since 2018 are still here within our system, being held in, you would like to think that most of them not in hotels now, but perhaps in council house accommodation or elsewhere, awaiting a decision on their asylum claims.
That is insane, is it not? Let me bring in Benedict Spence. 85% of those who've arrived, did you say since 2018, Mark?
Since 2018, since
still in the system awaiting a decision.
Crisis as such, because before we had people who were smuggling themselves in the backs of lorries, are still doing that, as we were reporting on earlier in the week. But the small boat crisis is a very visible manifestation of people trying to get into the country now. And really, it's since that period, since 2018, when the first small boats started to appear in the Channel, that only 15% of those have actually had their asylum claims dealt with and either granted asylum or denied asylum.
The figure that we've heard before, I will come to you, Benedict, in a moment, but I love...
We'll let you get a word in.
We'll let you get a word in a minute.
I'll just sit here and look happy to be here.
The figure, Mark, that the most recent one we've heard is this cost to the taxpayer of £5 million a day for hotel accommodation. Is that also outdated now?
Yeah, I think it is. We put a report together about 2.5 months ago, at least, which calculated that some 30,000 hotel rooms were being requisitioned every single day by the Home Office to house asylum seekers. Now, since that period of time, some 15,000 more have arrived on small boats, and many of those will go into hotel accommodation.
I mean, Benedict, some might say it's just as well because the Brits can't afford a staycation, so at least someone's paying for the hotel rooms. What do you think of this?
Oh, I mean, I'm not surprised actually that so few people have had their applications processed, and given that the government of this country, the state's shut itself down for 18 months, and we've had issues from everything from HGV licences to planning permission. Nothing's actually back online, so to speak. But there has, of course, been a massive uptick in the numbers of people coming over. Now, a lot of that is being driven by people fleeing Afghanistan, and I think the public have a lot of sympathy for people that are coming from Afghanistan. There's no real major drive, I think, to be sending home women and children, most of whom we suspect are here. The Albanian issue, I think, is slightly more pernicious because we all know that it's a loophole that some clever people have managed to find and get through. But I think that there is that sort of, without meaning, obviously, to lump an entire nation in with an issue, the Albanian community in the UK is disproportionately represented in our prisons entirely because it runs the cocaine lines into much of Europe. This is something that, partly because of their displacement, because of the war in the Balkans, they found themselves sort of spread around the capitals of Europe, and it turned out to be a very useful way of getting cocaine into Europe from Latin America when crackdowns were made against the Italian mafia, which used to be the main port of call. So when you have that and you see the sort of the numbers, and they're coming very specifically from one country within Europe, and then you look at actually what is the relationship between a lot of illegality in this country and that particular country. Oh, it's cocaine trading, it's importing, it's drug dealing. And people will think, well, that's, maybe they are coming for different reasons. Maybe they're coming because they want a better life, they want a better life for their children, this, that, and the other. Okay, fine. But it sets a real sort of nasty undertone there where people are hijacking what is fundamentally a refugee crisis and using it to import people who really have no right to be here and possibly don't have the best interests of themselves, this country, or the law at heart.
We hear all the time, don't we, about these figures of people who are coming here who do not have any real need to seek asylum or refuge. Do we know, Mark, what the figure is of those who genuinely do need refuge, who are escaping a war-torn country? Do we ever see that figure?
Well, we know in terms of, obviously, the numbers who've been coming across from Ukraine. There's more than 120,000, I think, that have been granted permission to come to the UK as part of what we're doing to help out in that war effort.
But I mean, in the boat crisis, do we have, is it 5%, 10% of them getting off the boat who've come from Yemen, Afghanistan, Eritrea? Do we know?
Well, I think let me answer that a slightly different way. We often hear from the charities, the human rights lawyers, that those coming by small boat are being demonised because actually at the end of the day, the vast majority, 75% or more, are granted asylum. That's actually not true. That's misrepresenting what the situation is, because we've just said in the previous answer that 85% of those who've arrived by small boat haven't yet had a decision on their asylum.
They might still be here, it's only because they've not been through the process yet.
Yeah, and it may well be that a very significant proportion of that, much lower than the 3/4 who are granted asylum, are granted, asylum or refused asylum at the end of the day. Especially now as we have new borders and immigration bill that's become law, which actually as part of that particular legislation looks at the method of entry into this country and those coming on a regular route, such as small boats or in the back of lorries, that counts against them in the assessment of whether they have a legitimate right to be here as an asylum seeker.
OK, good start, guys. Thank you. We're going to be moving on to this a little bit. Well, no doubt we'll talk about it a bit more. I also would say, have a look at Albania. On Google, it's rather beautiful. It's got a lot of coastline. It's got a mountain range. It's got 15 national parks. I kind of want to go, guys. Do you know where you're coming?
Can we just add, actually,
a bit nicer where you are.
The country of Albania, the population is rapidly declining. 15% since the 90s. It's just under 2.8 million people at the moment. Absolutely tiny. And yet it's so disproportionately represented in terms of those that are coming across.
Do you know what else is going down in Albania? Because I was looking at this today. Their crime rate is going down. Now, before you say it, I know what the punchline is. Yeah, because they're all coming here. Right, let me know what you think. Is Priti Patel's plan to send them all back a good one? Let me know. GBViews at gbnews.uk or tweet us at GBNews. Now, coming up, we'll be crossing to our reporter in Liverpool, where police investigating the murder of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt Corbell say that they have a number of very positive lines of inquiry. Time for a short break now and a check on the weather.
Hello, Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. Following the wet start to the day in the southeast, it's now turning drier and clearer in many places. A cooler night to come, and then some showers turning up in the west later because of another little feature coming in from the Atlantic. But it's this cold front, and just ahead of the cold front, that has caused some heavy and thundery rain in the southeast and across East Anglia early in the day. That's moving out of the way through the evening. Cloud eventually clearing, and then with the lengthy clear spells for England and Wales, a much fresher night to come, more comfortable for sleeping, but cloud thickens for Scotland, for Northern Ireland, for West Wales and eventually western parts of England, with some showery rain turning up here. For most, temperatures will dip to 10 to 13 Celsius. I think in some sheltered spots with clear skies, we'll see the single figures first thing Friday, but plenty of sunshine through central and eastern England, a very different start to the day in the southeast. Northern Scotland also faring well for sunny spells, but a cloudy zone for central and eastern Scotland into much of western England and Wales. Parts of Northern Ireland also seeing that cloud and some showery rain where we've got the cloud. Temperatures mostly around average, high teens, low 20s in the north, low to mid 20s further south, but the showers could really perk up by the end of the afternoon across southern Scotland, the far northwest of England. Some heavy downpours for a time before they move away to the east, and then clear spells developing for many overnight once again. And quite a cool start to the weekend for parts of Scotland and Northern Ireland. Single figures fairly widely away from urban centres. Further south, a bit milder, but a lot of cloud around first thing Saturday, I think, in many spots. There will be further showers here and there, primarily down the spine of England and into parts of East Wales. Sunny spells otherwise. And into Sunday, plenty more sunny spells to come, just the odd shower, and warming up as well by Monday.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday, and there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club. Oh my goodness me. And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back. Thank you for joining me. You're with Bev Turner on GB News. We are turning now to the tragic killing, this awful story of 9-year-old Olivia Pratt Corbell. The police now say that they have a number of very positive lines of inquiry. So let's cross to our Northwest reporter, Sophie Reaper. Sophie, good afternoon. What's the latest there on Merseyside?
Well, there have been 3 gun-related murders in this week alone in Liverpool, and this morning, Detective Chief Superintendent Mark Kameen gave us some updates on each of them. First, told us about the case of Sam Rimmer, who was killed in Dingle on the 16th of August. 3 men were arrested on suspicion of murder. They've now been released on bail and inquiries continue. The police have said they want to know things like who are the men responsible and where is the gun that was used. They then moved on to Ashley Dale, who was killed on the 21st of August in Old Swan. A man and woman have been arrested, a man on suspicion of murder and a woman on suspicion of assisting an offender. Inquiries are continuing around those 2 individuals. Police also confirmed they still believe that Ashley was not the intended target of the attack. Finally, they moved on to the case of Olivia Pratt Corbell, the 9-year-old schoolgirl who was shot dead here in Dovecot on the 22nd of August. They told us a number of positive lines of inquiry are now being investigated. They also said that 35-year-old original target of the gunman, Joseph Nee, remains in hospital, but that when his treatment has finished, he will be returning to prison. They also said they found the other man who was being chased alongside Joseph by the gunman. Merseyside police have been carrying out a series of raids and have made arrests in an attempt to crack down on gun-related crime. They told us they're baring their teeth. They also said that they urge anyone with any information to come forward as soon as possible to try and find the perpetrators behind these 3 murders.
Thank you, Sophie. Good job. Sophie Reaper there up in the northwest of England in Merseyside, bringing us the latest. The police there working very hard. They did a press conference this morning and said this is a fast-moving situation. And, of course, we will bring you any news when we hear it. We're joined now by Eugene Sobers. They join us from Manchester. Eugene is a former gang member who now works as a youth worker, helping to steer young people away from a life of crime. Good afternoon, Eugene. When you listen there to our reporter, it's quite a catalogue of violent crime in a very short space of time, isn't it? This is unusual for the UK. What do you think is behind it?
I think just the drivers of violence, it's just the inequality, it's the poverty, it's the lack of jobs, it's people not believing in tomorrow in a positive way. They're waking up and doing what they have to earn that buck. And unfortunately, some of these problems lead to issues like what we're seeing there, where little girls are being killed. You know, it's just guys settling their problems in the street. It's ridiculous and it's a dying shame. It's just something needs to be done about it, and we need to do it now.
Just let me dig deeper into that, Eugene, because I think what you've basically just said is if you've not got any money or you've not got any prospects, this is your only option. I don't think that's quite what you're getting at, is it? Because there'll be a lot of people watch this who go, well, hang on a minute, we used to have a time when people didn't have any money and the poor didn't necessarily turn to violence.
The situation is people are airing their problems in the street and bringing them across where it's a separate entity entirely. Some of these people here, they're not part of the wider society. They're part of a small number of people that do these kind of things. I think maybe if we knuckle down and see where the problems are coming from, that we could understand them better.
So just let me understand this. So in terms of the status symbol, because this is quite a bit of it, isn't it, Eugene? The status of these gang members, there's a huge amount of kind of credibility at stake amongst a small community that they feel part of. Why do they not feel part of a bigger community?
Because these people, how they want to live, they're not wanting to be part of society. They don't want to go to work because they've realised there's no jobs there, and this is something that they don't want to turn around. They're not interested in being part of the society, so they live in a very closed-off world. And when we try to explain and speak about them, it's very hard for someone like me to have the wider society to understand the mindset of these people. It's something that it will never be understood, and what we're trying to do now is pick up the pieces from something that's happened that is always going to be there as long as these people are on the streets. But there's no clear answer that I can give you in terms of how we will resolve this, other than we keep doing the solid work as youth workers. We're out there, we're trying to connect with the younger generation to make them understand that these role models that they might be following, they're corrupted, they're doing the wrong things. They need to start believing in some people like myself and other people out there who've turned it around and can show them a brighter future.
So who are these role models that they're looking to? Do you mean people online or people within their community?
Yeah, it's twofold. I think, to be honest with you, those that are online, the American influence ones, they paint a picture of a life that's just not real.
Yeah.
It's just not real. They're only posting stuff that shows them winning. I mean, real life people from the community, the entrepreneurs, people who have got businesses in my community for the last 25, 30 years, it's talking to them. It's the gang members from the 90s who have lived through the trauma, who have had the cars, clothes and the jewellery, who will show you that the trauma that comes with that, it is not worth it. These are the role models. These are the people that these kids will see every single day. They don't have to follow them on the social medias at all, because it's just not real. And that's what we're trying to do, encourage some of the gang members from the 90s to come out, have a conversation, let the kids know that what you're going through now might seem like that's the thing that you want to do. But on the other side, it's nothing but laced with trauma, dread, misery and regret.
Don't they need alternatives? Don't they need alternatives as well, though, Eugene? Don't they need sport?
Of course.
They need opportunity, they need training, they need jobs, they need to feel a sense of purpose when they get up in the morning.
I said the inequality there. I mean, we've got role models, we've got football stars down here, we've got guys who are ex-gang members who are in the UFC now, who are in Bellator, who are in different fight championships. These guys were hardcore gang members. They've turned it around, they've used violence to now feed their families. We've got role models here. It's just trying to get the youth's attention. It's so hard when our own government, for example, they lay down policies and just don't back them up. You know, these kids, they see what's happening on the news, you know, they see what's happening around the world. They're not getting motivated by that. We're trying to pull them back in and say, look, don't pay no attention to that. Believe in us, we are the truth. We're the ones who have got boots on the ground in these communities trying to make the changes. We just need the support. And if anybody out there that wants to come on board, more than welcome.
Let me ask you one more question. I could talk to you all day because I think this is exactly the voice that we need to hear on this conversation. I genuinely do. What are they frightened of, these kids? Anything?
Do you know what they're frightened of? I'll be honest with you, losing. They will take that risk to earn that money, because where they come from, it's from a really bad place. They will take that risk, and unfortunately, they're not going to change. All we need to let them understand is you can go to be a winner and you can chase that bag, but do it in a constructive way. It's not going to change until we get out there, as I say, people like myself and others, and show them that you can turn it around no matter where you've been or where you're at in your life. You can turn it around, and we will stand there with you and face that fight with you. That's what we're trying to get across.
Oh, Eugene, you're a good man. Thank you so much. Honestly, I wish there was more people like you in the world that they'll be there as a youth worker to help these kids, because that's what they need. Hope we speak again soon. Eugene Sober's there from Manchester. He was a former gang member who now works as a youth worker. It's good, isn't it, when you hear people like that and you realise that there are people on the streets with these kids that can stop them committing these crimes before they get to that point. Anyway, coming up on the show, we've still got a lot more. We're going to get more from Benedict Spence in a moment, and also how hundreds of students who sat alternative exams to A-levels are still waiting for their results 1 week on. Now it is time to check on the news headlines.
Good afternoon, it's 2:33. I'm Rhiannon Jones in the GB newsroom. Police have said they will not rest until they find the gunman that killed 9-year-old Olivia Pratt Corbell in Liverpool on Monday. In a press conference, Merseyside detectives also confirmed they've identified a second man involved in the fatal shooting. They say he was with the 35-year-old who was shot. The gunman remains at large despite pleas from officers for his surrender. Detective Chief Superintendent Mark Carmine says the force is working around the clock to find Olivia's killer.
For the man responsible for this brutal, callous, thoughtless attack to surrender himself to the police. Unfortunately, that individual has failed to do that, but my message to him remains the same. We will not rest until we find you, and we will find you.
The GCSE pass rate this year has fallen since 2021, but does remain above pre-pandemic levels. The number of top grades is also down from last year, but higher than in 2019. Students across England, Wales and Northern Ireland are receiving their GCSE results today after sitting exams in person for the first time in 3 years. And Britain will offer technical expertise to Ukraine as part of a new support package to help the country rebuild its infrastructure. Transport Secretary Grant Shapps says British experts will share technical knowledge in building airports, runways and the reconstruction of ports. Engineers from a number of UK companies like Rolls-Royce and Heathrow Airport will also help. TV Online and DAB Plus Radio, this is GB News. It's back to Bev with We Need to Talk About in just a moment. Don't go anywhere.
Join my show Farage, 7 p.m. till 8 p.m. Monday through Thursday. And there you will get opinion, analysis, debate, and I'll cover stories that nobody else dares to touch. You've been cancelled. Join the club.
Oh my goodness me.
And then for the last 15 minutes, talking pints. We're over a drink. We have a civilised conversation with someone. We very often disagree, but we do it in a grown-up way. Come and join me on Farage.
My name is Andrew Doyle. Join me every Sunday evening at 7 p.m. for Free Speech Nation. This is a show where we address current affairs and news stories of the week with the help of two wonderful comedian panellists. I brought in comics because I want to give it a lighter edge, and also they work for less. See you there.
Hi there, it's Stephen and Anne.
At breakfast from 6 a.m, you'll always be caught up with everything you need to know, the latest headlines, opinions and debates.
We'll bring you the good news and the bad, but most of all, we're here for you.
Remember, send in your views and let us know what you would like us to talk about.
That's because we're your news channel. And every morning at 6 a.m, it's breakfast on GB News.
I'm Dan Wootton. Join me Monday to Thursday from 9 to 11 for the feistiest and most fun news debate on TV, where free speech reigns. I'll bring you a sharp take on the day's biggest stories, bombshell newsmaker interviews, and A-list guests. And I guarantee you, no spin, no bias, no censorship, and no reason to go to bed. That's Dan Wootton tonight, Monday to Thursdays from 9 on GB News.
Welcome back to We Need to Talk About. This is GB News and I am Bev Turner. Thank you for keeping me company. Now, it's been a big day for GCSE pupils who this morning received their results. The pass rate for this year's exams in England, Wales and Northern Ireland has fallen since 2021, of course, but it remains higher than 2019. And that's the last year exams were sat before the COVID pandemic, of course, where the teachers basically marked their own homework and gave them their grades. Now, there's a north-south divide in success levels too. In London, 32.6% were marked at grades A and above, but in North East England and in Yorkshire and Humber, just 22.4% got top grades. I mean, we say A, but an A is a 9 now, isn't it? So, meanwhile, the leading charity Childline says that the number of children seeking counselling for exam stress has reached record levels, as Jeff Moody reports.
COVID, lockdowns, the war in Ukraine, the climate crisis. It's no surprise that Childline is reporting a 30% rise in children seeking counselling.
Well, last year, Childline delivered over 73,000 counselling sessions to children around mental health and wellbeing. And we know that the pandemic hit children really hard. They were out of school. Some were in households where they didn't feel safe. For some, school was that place of safety. There weren't services looking out for them. And for some, it was a really difficult time.
The difficult times didn't end after lockdown. For many, they were just beginning.
Children are concerned about environmental issues. They're concerned about the state of the world. Yes, Ukraine. They're also worried about, when we're thinking about exams, they're worried about what the future might hold for them. Are they going to get a job? They're worried about the cost of living crisis and what that means for their family. But they're also impacted by things like social media, what they see there, body image. There's a whole range of things that can really impact on children's mental health and well-being.
And now, news that the number of GCSE grades marked 7 or above is set to fall by 230,000 this year as the government attempts to combat grade inflation. Childline, backed by the NSPCC, is urging children not to stress. There are plenty of choices out there, even if their grades don't pass muster.
There is also the opportunity to take resits. There's also the opportunity to talk to people outside of education, like Childline counsellors, to talk about, okay, well, what worked well for you? What are you good at? So not just seeing a number on a sheet, but actually thinking, okay, I was good at that bit, wasn't quite so good at that bit. What can I now focus on?
Plenty to focus on for the future. The focus today, those little slips of paper. Jeff Moody, GB News.
So let's speak to Jude D'Alessio, who is a Conservative councillor and school governor in Bristol. Hello, Jude. Thank you for joining us this afternoon, if you are there. Where is Jude? Hello, Jude.
Hello, Bev. How are you?
Hi. Right. So you are a Conservative councillor and a school governor?
That's it, yeah.
Can I ask you how old you are? Because you look like you might have sat your GCSEs today, if that's not too rude a question.
No, that's very flattering, thank you. No, I'm 21.
Oh, no, hang on a minute. That is, you are very young still to be. How do you become a Conservative councillor and school governor at 21?
I think just a bit of hard work, really, and a willingness to get stuck in, to be honest. There's no magic behind it, or at least I don't think there is. But I love doing what I do, and very happy to, I think, represent young people on these types of roles.
Well, good for you. So you only did your GCSEs about 5 minutes ago anyway, so you're the perfect person to talk to about this. So what have you seen as a school governor and as a councillor in terms of how this particular cohort, they've had a tough time, haven't they? They were locked in their bedrooms pretty much on and off for 18 months. How do you think they've coped with this period running up to these particular exams?
Yeah, I think really I have complete sympathy with all the pupils having their results today. Of course, we saw in your report just then that lots of students are feeling anxious. To be honest, I think that results days are always anxious. I remember feeling really anxious with my A-levels and GCSEs, as did everyone else. So I think really it's... I think the difference probably is now there's a lot of pressure after COVID. But that's, of course, because we've also had the grade inflation, so there might be sort of a heavier expectation on young people to achieve higher grades because maybe their peers in the years above did so. But actually, I think, from what I've heard as a school governor and as a councillor, young people have coped well. And just as long as they realise that, academics are not everything, there are plenty of other ways you can prove your worth as a student. And also, university is not everything either. Plenty of other opportunities like apprenticeships and just going straight into work suits some people far better than academics do.
Do you think we've gone wrong a little bit with that? Because it was kind of Tony Blair's government, wasn't it, that introduced this idea that the majority of students, rather than the minority, should go to university. And it feels like we're still kind of recovering from the fallout of that, with lots of kids who end up going to uni that probably don't necessarily benefit from it and now come out with a whole lot of debt.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. So Tony Blair had the target to send the majority of children to university, and then a few years ago, Gavin Williamson, as Education Secretary, removed that target. I think that was a great decision. Look, people who can go to university and can flourish at university should absolutely go. But what I've been saying for years as a school governor is that if you are not someone who thrives in an academic environment, which is completely fine, you would be far better off actually avoiding the time spent at university and the debt you incur as a student, and actually looking at something like an apprenticeship, or like going into an entry-level job and working your way up there. So I think, it is a mistake that we almost, as a society, we see university as this kind of paragon of achievement, when really actually some people would do far better if they looked at other routes. And I think it's good that actually the government is today encouraging those other routes.
Jude, you yourself are rather fascinating to me, I can't lie. And there will be some students today watching who might have sat their GCSEs and they've thought, I want to be like Jude D'Alessio when I grow up. So what's your journey? How did you get to be a Conservative councillor at 21? Did you go to uni?
So I've literally just graduated from Bristol. I did a law degree there. I've always wanted to be a lawyer, so I think for me it was natural. I mean, it might be slightly strange that I'm telling people consider other things other than university, but then went to uni myself. That was because I always had this career in mind, and you need a degree to be a lawyer. So that was my journey. And apart from that, I'd say, as I said earlier, academics are not everything. So I think the best thing perhaps you can do as a student wanting to get on in life is get stuck into those extracurricular activities. Take an interest in the news and politics.
Yeah. And if I can ask you, Jude, do you want to be Prime Minister one day?
I think that's probably too ambitious at the moment.
And that is such a politician's answer, and that is probably why you will be. Right, lovely to talk to you. I'd love to see you again on GB News. Jude D'Alessio there, who is a Conservative councillor and school governor in Bristol at the ripe old age of 21. That makes me feel like a failure. Is it you, Benedict?
I'm horrified by the core concept of Jude. He seems to have his head screwed on at age 21. I wasn't even aware where I was at age 21. No, I think, my word, it's upsetting to hear him put it also quite so cogently, looking so fresh-faced at the time. But, I mean, he touches upon the important point, which is that most people getting their results today don't really need to be going to university. It's not to say that your schooling doesn't matter. It really does matter. And I think that's part of the problem, is that increasingly pupils are being funneled into a system which is designed to get them through the exam so that they can go to university, so they can get the debt, so the schools can say, yes, we've done very well, tick the box. The universities can say, fantastic, we've got the money, tick the box. And then they come out at age 21. Very few of them are like Jude, in fact, in a fantastic opposition. They've got the debt. They're not entirely sure. A lot of people are still not sure what it is they want to do. And they will find when they get into the world of work that what they did as their degree doesn't really matter. It doesn't really help in any way.
But isn't university much more about sort of learning to live on your own, learning to budget, learning to share a fridge with somebody?
I mean, it's
not just about studying.
It is to a point, but I don't think you need 3 years for that. That's part of the problem, is that I think a lot of university courses could be done in 18 months. If we were being honest about this, a lot of history, English degrees, humanities degrees like mine could have been done in a much shorter space of time, and possibly having it done in a shorter space of time might have helped people grow up a little bit faster. I certainly don't think that the way to make people grow up is to say, well, you've learned how to make pot noodle, and now here's 30k of debt. I know that is what existence is for a lot of people, but we should aspire for something other than that.
But you see, when I look back on mine, because I did English at uni as well. Did you do English then?
I did history.
So you did history. So I think that what you got out of those 3 years was very different, though. Your first year is just about probably being in halls of residence and I don't know, sleeping with inappropriate people. And your second year, you grow up a bit and maybe do a bit more work. And then the third year, you're much more mature. You've worked out who you are. You look into the future. Isn't there a journey that you go on that's more about maturity?
I think there is for some people. I don't think it's uniform for everybody. And actually, I think a lot of people drop out of university. They end up changing courses. They chop and they change. And
that's true.
We hear a lot about mental health crises at university because actually people go to university not mentally robust enough to deal with it. And that's something that schools should be imparting on people before they get to university. I think university would be much better for people when they hit their mid to late 20s. Actually, they've done a few jobs here and there, they've learnt about life, they've learnt whether or not this is worth it, and then they decide, do you know what, actually, this is something I'd really like to invest my time and money in. Rather than at age 17, 18, when, we have to be honest, you think you know everything and you know absolutely nothing.
Actually, what you've done there inadvertently is advocate for the year out, because I took 2 years out, so I went at 21. You're right, I'd sort of forgotten that. And actually then sat there feeling incredibly grateful that I got to sit around and talk about poetry all day. It felt like a luxury that I genuinely appreciated. So, right, now, moving on. Thanks, Benedict. We heard in Jeff Moody's report just a minute ago that Childline reported a rise in the number of GCSE pupils reporting exam anxiety. Well, I imagine stress levels are also high for the hundreds of students who sat their Cambridge technical exams. These are vocational qualifications equivalent to 3 A-levels, but a week-long delay in issuing results has left many students in limbo and uncertain of their university places. So let's find out a little bit more about this. So we're joined by Keith Mason, who is the father of a Cambridge technical student who is still waiting for her grades. Good afternoon, Keith. Thank you very much for joining us. It's very easy at this time of the year, isn't it, to just concentrate on A-levels, and the newspapers are full of people opening A-level envelopes and being excited or tearful. But of course, there are a whole number of young people who've sat these alternative qualifications. So tell us about your daughter. What did she sit and where is she at now?
Okay, she sat health and social care. She is waiting for the result. There's been a bit of a development, actually, even in the last 90 minutes. So it may be that her result is available at the school, but as yet we haven't managed to find out what it is. But even if she has got her result, there are still at least 250 or 230 people who have not got their results yet. And as of yesterday, it was sort of 700 people. And the point is, I think the big point for these individuals is they're compromised out of sight when it comes to clearing if they haven't got the grades that they required for their first offer university.
So just explain to us, just explain how that works then, Keith. When you say they might be left out of this clearing process, why?
Because when you get your results, it's up to your university then to look at the results you've got and decide whether an offer is going to be confirmed or withdrawn. But you cannot enter the clearing process properly unless you actually have had your offer withdrawn. You can't enter it until you've got a decision. But all the universities are not issuing decisions on some of the BTEC candidates because they haven't got their results. So the universities are actually doing the gentlemanly thing and keeping the offers open until those results are available. But of course, clearing has opened for everybody that did have their results, primarily people taking A-levels only. And clearing is a bit of a bun fight. You know, you go into it and people scrabble around for what's available, and before you know where you are, most of what's available has been taken up.
That feels incredibly unjust, particularly for your daughter's generation, who have been through so much with having school online for so much of the time. They've missed out on the social life and the normal relationship developmental, kind of trajectory that teenagers go on between the ages of 16 and 18. And they've also had their education knocked by having to do so much online, which will suit some kids, but not all of them. So you must feel, and your daughter must feel, incredibly frustrated that even at this final hurdle, they're having this put in their way.
Yeah, it's grim indeed, and even to the trivial kind of social aspect of being able to go to results day and celebrate with everybody else, even that's denied. I mean, the likelihood is, I've spoken also to OCR today, that this has been part caused by COVID itself and the facility to drop units and people dropping units and maybe different people dropping different units and wait results not uniformly across the candidates, being a barrier to issuing results. But it does seem strange that this kind of lack of ability to issue the results only really came up right at the last minute. Why weren't they communicating about it for months? They've had months.
Yeah, it just feels like another one of those situations where COVID is being used as an excuse, isn't it, for some sort of systemic inefficiency. And it feels like it's the easy excuse. Oh, we'll blame COVID. We're still blaming it. I think we're still going to be blaming it for everything in 10 years' time. Now, in a statement, the OCR Awards have said, we have now issued every result for students with higher education progression needs where we know that they have met the criteria for a Cambridge Technicals qualification, and they add, we are still working with a small number of centres concerning up to 226 results for students with potential higher education progression needs to help those schools and colleges to establish if they can provide additional information that would enable eligible students to receive qualifications. As we receive that information, we will issue any outstanding results. Does that sound satisfactory to you? Where's our guest gone? Oh, he's still there. Our guest has gone. So I was interested to hear what he had to say about that. They've also set up a helpline, apparently, with details on their website. So by all means, if you are one of these people waiting for any of those results, you can have a look on the websites. Cambridge Technicals, I'd never heard of those, Benedict, have you? It's so easy, isn't it, to presume that A-level is the only option at sixth form?
I hadn't heard of them either. But again, it's we do hear something about that every year. Something goes wrong somewhere. And I mean, obviously, we've had the COVID situation, and the furore about that really brought it home. But I mean, as you say, it's one of those things where something that's probably already a built-in issue with the system, it can be blamed on COVID. And I mean, as you know, we'll be sitting here, we might not be sat here in 100 years, but people will be in 100 years' time pinpointing the pandemic and going, well, yes, that can be blamed for just about everything that went wrong, or at least it was officially by the government for the next 50 or so years. But again, I think it's a sign of where our priorities are in this country, that very often I think education, even down to how people get the results, even they're told what university they can go to, what college they can go to, it's sort of a secondary thought. Actually, it's sort of pushed a little bit to the side until actually the day is upon you, because it's not the biggest priority in life. There are many other things that our country does prioritise. And when this happens, as it does sort of inevitably every year, we all shrug and go, oh, well, something must be done. But then we wait another year, and the results aren't as good, and the exams are dumbed down, and everything's gone wrong again. And really, I don't think we prioritise the futures of children in this country at all. I think that we would have a root and branch reform of our education system if we did. Actually, it's just there because it has to be provided. Actually, what the government cares about is NHS and people that will vote for it. And that's about it. That is the sum of our system now, and that's a really damning indictment on where we are.
I think you're right. And actually, somebody was saying the other day about how you can see they do these brilliant montages of these pictures, don't they? Black and white pictures of, let's say, industry, office place, workplace, and how different they are in 2022 compared to, say, 1900. And yet you see a classroom, and it's exactly the same in 2022 as it was in 1900. There might be a little bit more tech in the room,
but that's it. There might not be a blackboard in every single one of them. But
but there's a whiteboard. It's not that different. It's still sit down for a long period of time and teach, and it's a memory test still. You feel like sometimes, I sometimes feel like, particularly as a mum, that, you feel like you want to rip up the education system and just start again with something fit for purpose.
I think there are many things that this country, I don't want to be all nostalgic, it's very often the way is to hark back to all things used to be good in the good old days, but there were many things we used to do very well in this country. Our education system was something that other countries used to take from us because they liked how it worked, and it's still based, other countries have similar ones. Our justice system is another one. And if you look at the current state of those two things, and you think, my word, what on earth happened? And you look at the sort of salami slicing of resources that's been taken away. Now, obviously, I'm not somebody who's particularly in favour of a big state, an overgrown state, but there are certain things that the state does need to provide, sort of as standard, and these seem to be the things that it wants to get rid of and slice away because they aren't electorally particularly popular. Spending money on more schools isn't as popular as healthcare. Criminals, the criminal justice system isn't popular in general, so it just gets ignored.
OK. Benedict Spence, it's been lovely to meet you in person. I've seen you on GB News a lot. So
I've seen you a fair bit as well. It's funny,
it's nice to meet you. All right, I am done for today. I'm going to be back, as he says, 10 o'clock tomorrow morning. I'm going to be back doing To The Point, so do join me then. But first of all, it is time for the weather. See you soon. See you in the morning.
Hello, Aidan McGivern here from the Met Office. Following the wet start to the day in the southeast, it's now turning drier and clearer in many places. A cooler night to come, and then some showers turning up in the west later because of another little feature coming in from the Atlantic. But it's this cold front, and just ahead of the cold front, that has caused some heavy and thundery rain in the southeast and across East Anglia early in the day. That's moving out of the way through the evening. Cloud eventually clearing, and then with the lengthy clear spells for England and Wales, a much fresher night to come, more comfortable for sleeping, but cloud thickens for Scotland, for Northern Ireland, for West Wales and eventually western parts of England, with some showery rain turning up here. For most, temperatures will dip to 10 to 13 Celsius. I think in some sheltered spots with clear skies, we'll see the single figures first thing Friday, but plenty of sunshine through central and eastern England, a very different start to the day in the southeast. Northern Scotland also faring well for sunny spells, but a cloudy zone for central and eastern Scotland into much of western England and Wales. Parts of Northern Ireland also seeing that cloud and some showery rain where we've got the cloud.